Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we help you make sense of the corporate world before you even know what is coming. Today we're diving into a filing from QC Technologies Incorporated. It seems like they've been busy shaking things up behind the scenes, and we're going to decode what it all means for you. If you enjoy getting these clear, no-nonsense breakdowns of important company news, make sure you're subscribed. And hey, we've got a great community over on Discord with the link right there in the description below, so come join the conversation. First off, let's get a lay of the land with QC Technologies Incorporated. This is a current report, meaning they've got some significant updates to share. And it looks like a lot of these updates are about agreements and changes to existing agreements that could really impact how the company operates and for its shareholders. One of the big kahunas here is something called an omnibus waiver and amendment. Imagine you have a contract and then you and the other party decide to make a bunch of changes and excuse certain existing issues all at once. That's essentially what this is. On the 30th of September 2025, QC Technologies Incorporated worked with some key investors, they call them the required holders, to tweak some important documents. So, what did they change? One key part is what they call an excluded securities modification. Think of excluded securities as a list of company shares that are treated a bit differently under certain agreements. They changed the definition here to include shares of common stock that might be issued after the initial agreement, as long as it's part of an approved stock plan and doesn't go over a certain limit. This limit is pretty specific, capped at 15.0% of some existing shares plus other preferred stock shares. This sounds like they're giving themselves a bit more flexibility to issue stock for employee plans without breaking other deals. They also agreed to amend the Certificate of Designations. This sounds technical, but basically it's a document that outlines the specific rights and terms for a particular class of stock. In this case, their Series H convertible preferred stock, like a rulebook for that specific stock. They filed an amendment with the state to make these changes official. Another important part of this amendment involves the Registration Rights Agreement. This is an agreement that usually obligates the company to register certain shares so they can be publicly traded. The amendment here changed the deadline for filing a registration statement with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or CSE, instead of the previous deadline. They now have 30 calendar days after the closing date to get that done. They also got waivers for some things like prohibitions on issuing warrants to consultants, and a specific failure to meet a previous filing deadline. This suggests they were facing some challenges with getting their filings done on time and needed some flexibility. Now, shifting gears a bit, QC Technologies Incorporated also brought on some new help through a consulting agreement with James Altucher and Z-List Media. Incorporated, this agreement, signed on the 1st October 2025, is for 2 years, and the consultants will be providing a range of services. We're talking about fundraising, managing crypto portfolios, investor relations, strategic planning, and even helping the company find new business opportunities. As part of this deal, the company is issuing warrants to purchase shares of their common stock. Warrants are like options to buy stock at a set price. This deal is structured in tranches, meaning they'll issue these warrants over time. The first set, called the first tranche warrant, was issued right away for up to 100,000 shares at an exercise price of $5 per share. Then, 3 months after the agreement started, they'll issue a second tranche warrant for another 100,000 shares, also at $5. 9 months in, we see a third tranche warrant for 100,000 shares, but the price goes up to $7.5. And finally, 12 months in, a fourth tranche warrant for 100,000 shares at $10 per share. So they're essentially incentivizing these consultants with stock as they achieve certain milestones and the company's stock price potentially rises. These warrants and the shares they can be converted into were issued without a public offering, meaning they relied on specific exemptions from registration rules. This is common for private placements and consulting deals where the parties involved are considered sophisticated enough. This brings us to the unregistered sales of equity securities section. Basically, this is where they formally acknowledge the issuance of these warrants to the consultants. They're stating again that they used specific exemptions under securities law. This just confirms that these equity issuances are not being registered for public sale right now. Then we have the material modification to rights of security holders. This is where they tie back to the changes we discussed earlier, specifically concerning the Series H preferred stock and the Certificate of Amendment. Anytime you change the rights associated with a security, it's a pretty big deal for those holders. Let's look at some key personnel on the 3rd of October. 2025, the Board of Directors approved a grant of restricted stock units, or RSUs, to several important individuals. This is a way to reward and retain key employees and directors. In total, an aggregate of 200,000 restricted stock units were approved. These were split into two groups: initial grants and additional grants. The initial grants were fully vested on the day they were approved. That means these individuals received these units and they were theirs to keep immediately. These initial grants went to Joshua Silverman, the Executive Chairman Christopher Schreiber, a Director Bill White, a Director Stephen Fisher, a Director Mitchell Glass, the Chief Medical Officer, and a Director, and Gary Roch, the Vice President of Finance. The additional grants, on the other hand, will vest when the company gets stockholder approval to increase the number of shares available under their equity incentive plan. So these are performance-based, tied to getting shareholder approval for more stock options. This is a typical setup to ensure the company has enough shares allocated for future incentive programs. Now, let's talk about the exhibits. These are the actual documents that back up everything in the report. A key one here is Exhibit 10.1, which is the form of omnibus waiver and amendment agreement. This is the big document that outlines all those changes and waivers we talked about earlier. Then we have Exhibit 10.2, the consulting services agreement. This is the actual contract with James Altucher and Z-List Media, detailing the services and the warrant structure. And Exhibit 4.1 is the form of consulting warrant, showing the specifics of those warrants being issued to the consultants. Finally, we have the signatures officially certifying this report. Joshua Silverman, the Executive Chairman, signed off on the 3rd of October 2025. So what is the big picture here for QC Technologies Incorporated? They've certainly been active in restructuring some of their key agreements, particularly those with investors and consultants. The omnibus waiver and amendment shows a clear effort to gain more flexibility in issuing stock, likely to fuel future growth and manage existing obligations. The consulting agreement with James Altucher and Z-List Media, with its tiered warrant structure, suggests a strategic move to bring in external expertise, especially in areas like fundraising and investor relations, with a clear incentive tied to performance. The grants of restricted stock units, while standard for executive compensation, underscore the company's focus on retaining its leadership team. The company's direction appears to be one of seeking strategic partnerships and operational flexibility. The risks largely revolve around the successful execution of these new agreements and the potential dilution from stock issuances, especially if those early warrants vest and are exercised. The opportunity lies in leveraging the expertise of the new consultants and the flexibility gained from the amended agreements to drive future growth and, hopefully, a stronger stock performance. In conclusion, QC Technologies Incorporated is in a period of strategic adjustments, aiming to streamline its operations and secure expertise. The key for investors will be to watch how these agreements play out and whether the company can translate these behind the scenes changes into tangible business success. Alright, that is our breakdown of QC Technologies Incorporated's latest filing. What is your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company? Future, drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.